Today's workshop is about the administration side of importing data into DDM via the CSV file route. So we've got some mechanisms inside DDM administration. This can be useful for initial import of data. So whether it's at the beginning when you get DDM or whether you're merging databases and bringing additional data in. You could also use it if you are connecting to an MRP or ERP system and you're exchanging data on a regular basis, because we've got some automated capabilities as well. So this is all about data coming into DDM. We do have the ability to automatically send data out of DDM for other databases as well, that we could cover that on another topic if that's something that people want to see. So what we can see on my screen on the left-hand side is I've got a whole series of example CSV files in a folder on my machine, and I've tiled it with the DDM administration tool on the right-hand side. It doesn't really matter where I am in the admin tool. If I go back to users, we have a tools menu in the administration application where you can see the various import options, importing parts, documents, drawings, folders, item links, bills of materials, etc. The two examples I won't show today are importing users and importing groups, but the principle of how the mechanism works is exactly the same. So once I've been through the examples, you'll get an idea as to how the tool works, and therefore you should be able to apply it for users and groups. Now, I'm going to start off inside DDM. I've actually got a load of files I've created today, and I was going to start. I've got a saved search here just called workshops. The first workshop was category browser. We then did access controls, not as owner, and this workshop is all about importing via CSV. What I've done for this project is broken it down into a set of actions. We're going to start by importing parts, then bills of materials, and the reason we do it in this order is because you cannot build a bill of materials if the parts don't exist. So there's an order that these things have to be done in. We're then going to look at importing some documents, some drawings. We're going to build relationships between parts, assemblies, documents, and drawings. We're then going to import some folders, and then we're going to import or create relationships between files and folders. And then I'm going to show you the option of automating the import of data as well. So we're going to start with the importing of part information. I'm going to go back to my administration tool and choose the option to import parts. Now, before I go into that, I'm just going to show you an example of my parts CSV file here. So I'm going to just double click and open it into Excel. And let's just zoom in a little bit. So my particular Excel spreadsheet, I've got a header row that's telling me the titles of the columns, part number, issue, description, is it an assembly or not? And obviously you can build your own columns. So wherever your data is coming from, you would obviously give your columns titles, but it's essentially a comma separated file. You do have the ability inside Excel to do save as, and then you can save it as a CSV file, comma set, delimited, right, cancel. So there's my Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to say I'd like to import parts. Okay, we get this wizard window. Let me just do this, and I'm going to choose to import from the parts CSV file. Okay, then I click on the next at the bottom, the next in the wizard. And what we have on the screen, let's go back to full screen now. What we have now on the screen in the top section are all of the DDM attributes in the database. And what's being shown in the bottom half of the window is the contents of the CSV file. So we're previewing your data from your CSV file in the bottom half of the window. Now, the yellow highlighted fields are the required attributes for this to work. So I can see in my data, I've got an attribute called part number, and I'm going to map that. So this is my data source column with part number. So you see, as I select it, linking this column of data to that attribute inside DDM. And when I do that, it highlights it, because these CSV files can get quite complicated. You can have many columns of data. So it's nice that it highlights, so you know you've done that one as you're working through the spreadsheet. Description. I'm going to use the description column, and it's highlighting it. The issue is the issue column, and clearly naming your column headers can make life easy for you. So if they're nice descriptive names, that makes it a bit easier. We've already mapped description, but it's saying some cells have missing data. For description here, I've told it to use the description column, but it's given me a warning that some cells have got missing. Choose a default value. So I'm going to say, if there's no description, I'm just going to substitute that with the word missing. Okay, and I'm guessing if I look in the data here, this part in my data, part number 0114, does not have a description. So I'm just going to put that as missing. What category am I mapping to? Well, I don't have a category in my CSV file, so I'm going to map this because category is a required attribute in my database. So it might not be in your database. So dependent on which attributes you've made compulsory, it will highlight them in here. The status, there isn't a status in my source data, so I'm going to bring everything in at work in progress. We do need to specify whether the part is a part or an assembly. Okay, and I've got a column here saying yes or no as to whether this is a part or an assembly, and which is the latest issue, and I'm going to assume that everything is coming in at the latest issue. So we've mapped the compulsory attributes, and we can see highlighted in the bottom of the screen that we've covered everything. Now, at the top of the screen, there's a blue button and a salmon-colored button where you can save this import definition. So I can save this import definition, and I've just called it import 0001 parts DDM IMP. So this is the mapping file, so that if you're doing this as an iterative process where you might do a trial import, you're not happy, you delete the parts and you want to go through it again, rather than having to map the attributes manually, you can just go in and say reread that definition file. So if I was to cancel this and, well, can I say previous and then go next? So, they're still all in there. But if I say, for example, I can't clear them now. Anyway, you can just load the import definition file so you don't have to manually select them each time. I'm going to say next, and this is showing me what is going to be imported. You have the option here to create new records only, to create new records and update existing records. So if you were linking this to an ERP system, you could have things updating in both directions. Update only if there are any errors, you could stop after a certain number of errors, etc. There's a few options. I'm going to say create new and update existing, and I'm going to confirm my selection. And you can see that we're going through 146 parts being imported. Okay, this text-based report tells me that everything has worked fine, and I've got 146 records have been created and 0 have been updated, so they are all new records. If I go into DDM now and I say search all items, and let's say if I go to my anything created on or after today, and I run a search, what we can now see in here are all of the items that we've just imported into the database. So if I scroll down, because I've got some, there are 146 items selected. Okay, so that's what we're expecting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reserve these into my project folder, because we will delete the data later. So we've imported the part records. We're now going to go back to the admin tool because next we'd like to import a bill of materials. So to show you the CSV file for a bill of materials is made up out, so you need the parent number, the parent issue, the child number, the child issue, what is the item number, which is optional, and the quantity is optional. So to actually build a bill of materials, you only need to know child and parent. So this is a bill of material file, and clearly if you have other bill of material attributes, they can be included within the spreadsheet as well. So we'd like to import bill of materials, exactly the same process. Bill of materials, next. So this time, rather than mapping the attributes manually, I am going to load the definition file that I've previously saved for importing bills of materials. And there is my bill of material DDM import definition file. And you'll see now that all of my columns have been mapped. Again, because this can be an iterative process, especially when you're getting the mechanism working initially. So, next. Now, create new links only, create new links and update links. Do you want to remove children currently in DDM that aren't in the table? So because this is a bill of materials, if this bill of materials was coming, for example, from an ERP system and parts are being removed, clearly you want them being removed within DDM as well. So that's what this option is for. You have the ability to say, if it doesn't exist in DDM, we want to remove it. Okay, so various options worth paying notice to. I'm going to now say confirm, and the bill of materials have now been all imported, and I'm not getting any error messages. Okay, so let's go back into DDM. If I refresh my screen here and I look at my assembly 1, and in fact I can look in the preview here, assembly 1 now has a bill of materials within it because we've imported those relationships. So all of this should make sense, and we're doing them in a particular order. Right, the next import is we are going to import documents. And by the way, these CSV files that I've created as an example, if anybody wants a copy of these for testing and playing with, I'm more than happy to make those available. They're really quite useful. I didn't originally create them. One of the guys internally created them. I've just modified the file names so that they list in the order that you really should approach importing if you're building relationships. So the next thing we will do is we will import documents. Now, for my document import, we have a path to where those documents are. So if I look in the file system here, I've got a folder here called documents that are related. So these documents here are going to be imported into DDM automatically. And the CSV file is going to add all the additional metadata. Okay, so we're here. Again, I'm going to import the definition rather than doing it manually. So document import. And if we scroll down the screen here, we can see that the file to attach is in the file path column. If I say none, it's cleared that column. So this is the location of the physical files, and there is an option in here that says file to attach, and that's the location of the file. Now, another thing in here is current date and time. Now, I've already changed mine, but the default in here is, I think it's hour, colon, minute or something. So if I modify the standard date format, because we have a create date here column, we want that date to appear inside DDM. But the system is now telling me that this date format in the CSV file is not the same as the format that is specified at the top of the screen here, and therefore it cannot process this data. So we're pointing it at the right column, but what I need to do is say, well, no, my date format is this, and once it's the same, it takes that highlight away. So we know those dates will be imported correctly. There's a blank date here in my data, so if I sort this column, the top entry has got no date. So what will happen in this case is it will use the current time from the server. So i.e. the time now at the point of import. So let's say next. This is what it's going to do. We're going to create new records. We don't need to update any. Happy with all of this. And we're going to run the import tool. So I'm pretty sure everything came in okay. Yeah, no problems with that. So what we're looking for now is we've just imported documents. If we go back to DDM, what we should have is if I rerun my search for anything created on or after today, if we look at parts, scroll down, and we're seeing no documents. Okay, one document. That's interesting. Why is that? I'm not sure. That's not what I'm expecting. Okay, interesting. So what now I know why I'm not seeing them, because this is created on or after today, and therefore the only one appearing in my search is the one that didn't have a date, because we've applied today's date. If I do a query to say anything modified on or after today, and I rerun the search, what we then get is all of our documents. Ignore this assembly, that's for something else. But we now have our documents, number 1 through to number 11. They're the new documents that we've just imported. Okay. Just as a side note, I have the action client running on my DDM server that is connected to a product called Folder Mill that can automatically convert my documents into PDF format. So this utility, it's currently doing number 9 of 10. So that is on 10 of 10. So that's converting these documents. So if I select this PDF now, I'm seeing that document as a PDF embedded within the preview pane. So if anybody, we won't cover it today as a topic, but if anybody's not familiar with how to automatically create PDFs of Office documents, there is a tool for doing this. Right, so we've created and imported these documents. At the moment, these documents are not linked to any other item in the database. So the next import we're going to look at, let me just minimize this, is we're going to import drawings next. It works exactly the same way as the documents. So we're going to say we would like to import drawings. I'm going to do this from a CSV file. Choose the CSV file. Again, I'm going to load the predefined import definition so I don't have to step through manually. And we're ready to do the import. Create date. I'm using the current date. Okay. Date on. Maybe I should say create date, and it accepted it. It's happy with that column. Okay, so let's now confirm the import. And any errors? No. I believe everything's worked well. Close. Back into DDM. Rerun our search. And what we should now have are 2 drawings that have been imported. It's the same drawing, 2 different issues of the same drawing, because we had a column that told us the issue and which one was the latest. In fact, let me look at the attribute called latest issue. If I bring that attribute over, as best I can, like this, we can see that issue 1 is not the latest issue and issue 2 is the latest issue. Okay, so we've imported documents and drawings, the metadata and the physical files themselves. The next import that we're going to do is we're going to build the relationship between the parts, assemblies, drawings, and documents. So import item links. Again, I'm going to choose my CSV file, and the CSV file will tell me the child issue, the parent, and the parent issue. Item links CSV file. Next, I'm going to load my definition. It's highlighting the attributes that are compulsory. I'm going to load my definition that's been, was it Blue Peter? Here's one I did earlier. Was it Blue Peter used to say that?
Yeah, that's the one.
Item links. It's highlighted all of my import columns, so they've all been mapped across. I can say next. Now, the one we're going to search on is part number 1 here. So again, we are building all of these relationships. Let's confirm. Now, we have a warning here that we've got something in our relationship file where it's looking for a child and a parent that does not exist in the database. So my CSV file has things in it that don't already exist inside DDM. So it's worth looking at these this feedback file, and you'll see here. So if I come out of here, there's one warning: please check the log file. Okay, so the log file should be this file on the links. If I open, we're just reopening the file that I've just closed, and in there we can see here won't find part 14 of 15 parts. So it's telling me that in my CSV file it cannot find the child or the parent. Okay, so let's see what it has done. If I go and find my part number 1, in fact, what I should do is just, if I do it this way, it will find the part. So part number 1, which is my assembly, we've previously imported the bill of materials for it. And if I look at the structure of this assembly, the document is now linked to that assembly. So we've imported parts and assemblies. We then build the bill of material relationships. We then import the documents. We then import the drawings, and then we start to link those child parents together. So we have our full structure. Okay, if I select this here, if I select this assembly and look at the structure, there's the document. Look at the parts. So some of these may have more than one. The drawing will be linked to something somewhere along the lines, but you get the idea. Building those relationships. So the next one we're going to do, so that's the import capabilities in terms of items, parts, assemblies, drawings, and documents, and the relationships between them. The next thing we're going to look at, let me just hop back to my database here. I'm going to jump back to my tasks inside my project. And we have looked at parts. I've completed this. We've looked at bills of materials. We've done the document import. And we've done the drawing import. We've linked those together. And now we're going to work on importing folders. Okay, so let's go back to the admin tool. Again, I've got a CSV file. Let's just take a look at that CSV file. It's a pretty simple example, but it's a good place to start if you're doing these things. We're saying this is the folder number. This is the folder description. This is the created date, and you'll note one of them is blank. And the user that will be the owner of that folder, I'm defining that in the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so we now want to import folders from CSV. Here is my CSV file. Which table am I importing these folders into? So I'm going to import these into my development project folders. So you have to specify the underlying table that it's coming into. It could be here that let's say, for example, your non-conformances are triggered by an ERP system, and the ERP system automatically sends the data out for DDM to pick up and import. So there's lots of kind of different scenarios as to where these tools can be useful. I'm going to import this into my development projects. Again, it's highlighting the columns for me. These are the required attributes that are highlighted. The number of the folder I'm mapping to this column, the description to description, the create date. Let me say show required. Created on is the create date. Again, because I've modified my date format, it's happy with those changes. Okay. The creator, I'm going to actually load my definition file to see how I set this earlier. Okay, so I've mapped that as who created. So all of my mapping has now been done. And I shall say next. It's going to import all of the data. I'm going to create new records and update existing and say confirm. Import is complete, no warnings. Everything is fine. If I go back to the database and I go back to my research project, if I clear the screen and search, what we can now see in here are my new 11 folders that have been created as part of that import. So the next step is I'm going to hop back here, go back to my project. So we've looked at creating folders via import, that's completed. The next is linking folder content with the folder itself. So we want to import folder contents. The CSV file for folder contents. Next, I'm going to load my definition, my mapping definition with the data below. Folder content, and now it's mapping these. So we basically know the folder name, the child number, the child issue, the table that the child, is it a document, a drawing, etc., and is it reserved or referenced into the folder. We're looking for folder number 1. If I say next, we are going to take the defaults and confirm. Everything looks to be fine. Okay, we go back to the database. If I have a look now in my folder and look at the structure, we can see that our document here has been added to the folder. Okay. If we look at the document in the other direction, we can see that the document in turn is linked back up to the folder here. And the document is also linked to the assembly. So we've created folders via CSV import, and we've now mapped data to the folder. A bit like a bill of materials, you cannot map data to a folder unless the data has already been imported, because the content CSV file is only specifying the child and the parent relationship. So that's manual importing using the admin tool, which again is typical if you're migrating data from another system. I'm going to say that I've now done the folder content. And the last thing that I'd like to show you is the ability to automate the import of data into DDM. So similar to exporting data from DDM, if you release a part or an assembly, you can have that information electronically transferred out to an ERP system. So what I'm going to do now is look at my change orders. I've got a saved search on my screen, and I currently have 9 change orders in the system. Okay, we're going to go back here because I have a folder here where I've created a CSV file. Now that CSV file, if we open it, has got the information, which is the folder number, change order number, what is the change request, what is the change reason. Clearly I've just put some generic data in here, and what is the type of change. So these columns map to the attributes within DDM. Okay, so what I also have is I have a DDM import definition created in exactly the same way that we create the import definition on the other items in the database here. What I have the ability to do now under System is under EUM Import, I've added an automatic import routine. So if I just say create new, it's a CSV file import. You give it a name and some comments. You point it at the import definition file here. So you specify where your import definition file is. In my case, it would be this one. Okay, and there's various other options. I'm going to cancel this to show you the one that I've already created. And if I open this here, so it's a CSV file. I've named this ERP change requests. So my scenario is that the ERP system or any other database within the business can trigger a process within DDM. So I'm saying it's an active process. It's been enabled. I'm not going to re-import the import definition, but you have to point it at the import definition. The table is the change order folder table. We're creating new records and updating existing. This is our date format, and this is the server name. We have a watched folder where I'm going to drop the CSV file in. When it gets processed, it will move the CSV file to this folder, and if there are any errors, it will move the file into this folder. Watch file server. So you can be very specific about the file name, but because this is the only one in this folder, I've said anything with CSV file extension. So if you had multiple examples running, so maybe non-conformances, change orders, corrective actions, audits, then you would have specific names for your CSV files. I've just said anything that's a CSV because I only have one example. Email options, if it fails, we want to send an email, or if it's successful, send an email, who are we going to send it to, etc. So we've got some nice emailing options, and I'm importing the data as the administrator. If there is a password, you would need to apply it. So I'm going to cancel that. So what this is this is an automatic import routine based on a predefined import definition for folders, looking at a CSV file. So if I take my CSV file example, so what I'm simulating here is that the ERP system or another database is dropping a CSV file in the watched folder. And we can see that this folder now contains my CSV file. Well, DDM has been configured to monitor this folder, pick up the CSV file and import the related information. So when this CSV file disappears, I know that it's been processed. Okay, so that file has now been processed. Okay, if I look here in the imported, it's telling me that this was done today at this time. Okay, so I'm going to go back into DDM, because if I now refresh my query on open change orders, what we now see is I now have my new 7 change order folders that have been automatically generated and imported. So the mechanism can be used again for anything that you want to import via CSV. You define the import mapping and definition, and then you can set it as an automatic routine. Okay, if I just look at this example, the first example in here, sorry, if I look at this one and look at the properties, we can see it's given it the correct number, it gave it a description, filled in these other fields, etc. And we've automatically imported those folder types.